everybody. Welcome to the Class Zero Soldiers podcast episode. I don't know. I've lost count. Check the thumbnail. It'll be there. We are here today to talk about some gaming news. It's been a few minutes since we've had a proper episode outside of our Nintendo Direct reaction, which thank you for joining us, all of you that tuned in for the Direct reaction. It's one of our better performing videos on the channel, so welcome. I'm Zero.exe, aka the Hype One, the one that couldn't shut up during the Direct. Joined as always by my good friend SoldierByNight, aka the Calm Rational One. How's it going, Soldier?
Thanks for the intro. Zero, it's always good to be joining you here, and thank you for those tuning in. Always appreciate it. And yeah, it was a great Direct. Good way to kick things off for the year, I'd say. Lots of cool stuff. Lots of surprises, even some cool things to talk about outside the Direct that we'll get to as well.
Absolutely. And I just chuckling to myself because your voice got like bass boosted 10 times as soon as you switched over to your headphones. It caught me by surprise since you were just using the earbuds before. I was like, oh, that's funny. He's going full production mode. Love it. But yeah, Nintendo Direct stuff. We're going to talk about that. There's a couple other things that we want to touch on as well. We're going to talk about the Harry Potter game. Probably the first time in like a decade that we've had a decent licensed game come out that wasn't just complete trash and made by like some random third party looking for a quick contract or something. We also want to talk about the Dead Space remake a little bit. That one's been doing really well. It's, again, another huge surprise considering EA's track record, but they put out what seems to be the definitive version of the first Dead Space game. And we also want to talk about Hi-Fi Rush, and I think we could start there because that's kind of what we were talking about before we hit the record button here, and I was just laughing at some of the reviews on Metacritic here. So, for those of you who don't know, Hi-Fi Rush is kind of more of a AA type of game. It's an action game released for Xbox and PC. It kind of just shadow dropped, as far as I'm aware. There was no real build-up to it that I'm aware of, but it's been met with a lot of good reception. It's sitting at an 88 on Xbox and 89 on PC with user scores either at 8.9 or 9.0. But because it is a PC/Xbox exclusives, there's going to be console warring fanboys in the user reviews bombing it. And that's pretty much any console exclusive that comes out, you're going to get those people. So that's what I was looking at here. And it only took me 2 comments or 2 reviews to get to one. And they're way too overrated. Everyone is just excited that Xbox finally released a game, LOL. Kinda sad, honestly. 0 out of 10.
Boo.
Yeah. It's always great. I don't take too many people's opinions on the internet seriously, and neither should you, but it's always fun to look at the salt. It's like, why are you mad? Like, Sony has been killing it for like the last 2 years. They've had tons of great games. If you bought a PlayStation 5 over a Series X, or have both of them, like, this really shouldn't matter to you. Like, it's so weird to me that people go out of their way to just review bomb a game that they're never going to play. It's just weird, man.
People just want to champion one side. If it's their side, if it's the winning side, people enjoy that, and being competitive is great and all, but in the gaming world, the console wars really doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but, you can have all of them, and, most of the time they end up on each other's consoles, right? So when there's a moment where someone like Xbox has an exclusive game, and, it did better than a game like Sony's Forspoken, or Square Enix's rather, kind of makes you think. Makes you think, right? It's like, okay, wait, they had a way more, maybe production value, marketing, maybe that exactly. Like, I think the money into the marketing probably was just astronomical in comparison. Because I think before Hi-Fi Rush wasn't it during that Xbox presentation that they kind of just dropped the game on everybody's lap? We're like, hey, here's the game, and it's available after this, and then it kind of start picking up traction, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, there was no reveal before that Xbox Direct, and then it just immediately released on the 25th of January. I still need to download it myself. I heard it's a lot of fun, and I love the art style. It's definitely got those like Jet Set Radio Future meets Borderlands kind of vibe to it. Looks like a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
thankfully, it is a shorter game. It's a more double A experience as well, so it's something that you
Hmm.
can get through in just a shorter amount of time. So it's not like a huge time investment either, which as I get older, it becomes kind of a big deal for me. Like I play a lot of 100-hour RPGs, so my time for other games is kind of limited.
Yeah. I caught that the soundtrack was also really good for it.
Yes,
Um,
and they have it on YouTube actually, the whole
yeah.
soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a new release. So if you haven't checked that out, you're listening. Maybe maybe check it out. See if the music itself is good enough for you to even just give it a try. I don't believe there's a demo out for it or anything like that, but it's at a really good price. Still, what did you say earlier? Was it 30?
Yeah, it's $30, but it's also on Game Pass. So I mean, if you have Game Pass for PC or Xbox, you don't even have to play to try it. There's your demo; you get the whole game.
I have a question then. So even though this one, and I don't know if you can answer it for me right now, okay, so if it is on Game Pass, I was wondering, can you stream the game if you're on a previous Xbox, like an Xbox, One or Xbox One X or something like that? Like, is that something that you can do? Kind of
Since
interested,
it's
like,
since it's on XCloud or on
yeah.
Game Pass, that means you can play it through XCloud. Do the
Mm.
Xbox Ones have the XCloud streaming? Because I know it's technically still in beta, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure how that would work. Because I've never owned an Xbox One.
Okay. Yeah. So I've had the One X, and I've played some of the titles when I was using Game Pass. I believe I played, but see, I just don't know if they like wall that, right? Like, I wonder if that's where they also draw a line. So that's something that I'm just not like savvy enough to know the answer to. Where I'm like, do they still wall that from people that are on the previous console? I don't know. It's interesting. But it would be cool to be able to play them. I imagine a game as fast paced as Hi-Fi Rush, maybe you don't want it to be streaming and stuff. Um, but I was playing Mortal Kombat 11, I believe, and it ran really surprisingly well. Um, for being a streamed game, and it's cool. It's a cool way to be able to try stuff too, just to see it before you download it, because downloading 60 gigs versus just streaming a game real quick to see if you like it is another benefit from having the xCloud.
Gotcha. Yeah, it does look like you can play it. So as long as it's available on Game Pass, you can stream it through XCloud. And XCloud is on the older consoles, so yeah, that's one way to experience some of the newer games without having to upgrade your console, which is pretty cool, honestly. You'd think that's something that they would gatekeep for the new generation, you know? Like,
Yeah, totally. That sounds more like a Sony move these days. Not to bag on Sony. I love you, Sony. Um,
and that just shows you the difference in focus, though. Like
yeah,
Microsoft wants to make the service better. They want you to have Game Pass. That's their
they want
priority.
you to buy Game Pass, and no matter what console you have, and they've made that clear since the beginning, is that they want you to become a subscriber. And with Sony's solution, I feel like it's just not yet there, and hasn't really grabbed enough people. But once they have PS5 games available to download that are a bit more of like the popular games, I think it'll do better. But it's going to be a long journey having this generation become as successful as its predecessors, I feel.
Yeah, and with the point we're at of diminishing returns on consoles, like there's really no rush to upgrade to the newest version. Like with PlayStation 5, most big releases are still coming out on PS4. And we just talked about with the Xbox, like you don't even need the new Xbox if you're just going to play Game Pass because you could just stream those through xCloud anyway. Obviously, in both cases, you're not going to get the best experience, but the games are still playable. So there's no like urgency to upgrade like there is for Nintendo, for example, jumping from Wii U to Switch. It's an entirely different console experience, so you're going to want to upgrade so that you can take your console games portably, truly portably, and not, 10 feet away, maybe go to the other room with the Wii U gamepad. So it's we're at that point where there's really not a whole lot they can do to make the next console and more enticing outside of pushing bigger pixels and more
Although
frames.
big shout out to people that do play their Wii U still and use their Wii U. Because I know some people can be pretty simple too, like they do just like maybe playing a little bit of Mario Kart, Smash, and they don't care about all the new characters and stuff. I've actually met people who did not upgrade, and and it's kind of like those people you see with like TVs from the early 2000s still, and you're like, how are you still using those? But no, just mad respect to anybody using their Wii U in any which way.
Shout outs to the 3,000-pound projector TVs still in circulation.
Oh, those are so cool with the lamps and everything. Yeah.
Not so cool. Those are the worst TVs ever. If you don't sit at like the perfect
Yeah.
angle, you're just gonna see
Yeah.
like polarized glare. Oh, it's so bad.
But the speakers were impressive. I did appreciate those. Like they were,
Yeah, sure, but I mean, the main
yeah.
experience of a TV is the visuals. So, you fail on the
Uh-huh.
primary function, the rest of it's just whatever. Anyway, but no, I still boot my Wii U up from time to time to play Guitar Hero mostly. That's usually what I'm doing on my Wii U.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know the modding community really loves that device just because they've been able to get to the point where it's a bit easier to modify these days compared to a few years ago. Like I think right now you could do it like under 30 minutes and it's not too wild of a process. And you can have GameCube, you can have all the virtual console stuff, and now that we're kind of leaning toward a generation where we are playing games in a service, a la Switch online, and not being able to necessarily own some of those games. It's like, hey, purchase those games while you can. You still have that month and a few weeks here to make all those purchases. I would say support them just because those developers are still able to get that support from you. And it's nice having that yourself if you can. There's also great deals, so make sure you get those. But after that, I mean, it's gonna be Pirate City,
Sailing the high seas. Yark.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. I totally forgot about the shutdown of the Wii U and 3DS eShops, and a lot of good stuff there that you're not going to be able to play otherwise. Pushmo on the 3DS comes to mind. I would say the Etrian Odyssey games, but spoiler alert, we're going to be getting those on the Switch. So let's say we go ahead and talk about the Direct now that we've had some time to kind of process it and think
Yeah.
about what we saw. So what was your first overall impression of the Direct? What if you had to give this a letter grade? What would you say this Direct was?
I'd say it was like a solid A minus.
That's so funny.
If you can be like solid on a minus,
Honestly, that's the exact rating that I would give it. There was a couple met things here and there, but overall, just really strong showing. I also recognize that I'm probably the target audience for like 80% of the things they showed. So, if you're not a big JRPG guy, this may not have been the Direct for you, or just a big fan of like classic games, because we had a lot of classic game revivals. You want to talk about
Yeah.
stuff like we're getting a new Professor Layton game. I think it's like the first time in like 7 years or something. Advance Wars finally got a release date.
Yeah.
What else? Baten Kaitos. We got the remakes for Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, which was on GameCube Purgatory for the longest time. If you guys don't know, that was one of Monolith Soft's earliest games that they made after moving on from Square Enix and becoming their own studio.
It'll be great for you to try that. I'd like to hear your take on it. I know it's got like a card battling system, and that was a game that came out alongside Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube, which is now also available. If you haven't played that game, it is a nice, just a little side note here. Tales game. It's one of the favorited of the fan base for the Tales series. And yeah,
Don't buy it. I'm sorry, I can't recommend the remake. They did it based off the PS2 version. It's trapped in 30 frames a second.
I wasn't gonna get into that just because
No,
I
I'm
want
gonna
people
get
to
into
experience
that.
it. Okay.
Sail the 7 seas and emulate a GameCube copy. It's the definitive way to play the game. And it is a fantastic game. Don't get me wrong, but the remakes are just awful. They phoned it in. It's the polar opposite of what EA did with Dead Space, which is a miracle in itself that they were able to produce a good game in the 2020s. But yeah, no, if you want to play Tales of Symphonia, it's a fantastic game. If the remakes is your only way to play it, go for it. But just know you're not going to get the best experience.
And let me also say this, and this is in no way to defend the fact that they chose to port the PS2 version, which is what Zero is referring to here, the PS2 version of the game, because back then it was only for GameCube, right? So there was like a revised version. You know how sometimes Japan likes to do like a final mix or like a, Persona 4 Golden or, any of that where they just do a revised update kind of thing and it's got new content, characters, that kind of stuff. So with this, they had a few new scenes added in, some like bug fixes, and they chose bug fixes to port over the bug fixed version and extra scenes that had 30 frames instead of the 60 frame version, which is on the GameCube. So in a nutshell, yeah, if you have to play it these days, I would say maybe just get it on the Switch versus the other consoles, because having that 30 frames on a console as powerful as any of the rest just doesn't really make sense. You may as well just have it in your pocket and ready to play anytime. So I do suggest playing it on the Switch if you're going to get it like today, and it's the only way for you to play it, because otherwise you'll be kind of bummed out that people were playing it a bit better on the GameCube.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Honestly, if you have to get the remake, you might as well at least get the benefit of portability, because that's really the only upgrade you're going to get over the PS2 version, which it still baffles me they chose that version to port instead of the clearly superior GameCube version. But it is what it is. I was very excited for it until I found that out. So just don't waste your money if you want to have the best experience. But if you do got to play it, the Switch is the best way, because you can at least play it on portable. 30 frames per second doesn't look as bad when you're on a 6 to 7 inch screen. Let's get to some more fun stuff. Let's go back to good things that we're now. No. We're going to keep this negativity train rolling. We got to talk about that Splatoon 3 DLC. So, it's going to
Splatoon / Nier.
God. So, Splatoon 3 DLC, we finally found out what's actually going to be in the expansion pass. Octo expansion of Splatoon 2 was one of the best pieces of paid downloadable content Nintendo's ever released, so the bar was kind of high. They're releasing it in 2 waves this time around. The second wave is the one that we all care about, which is the story expansion. It's going to be the Octo expansion 2. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, the first wave is the one that I wanted to touch on here, because it seems like the most pointless thing to lock behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the Inkopolis from Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2, which was just the hub area. The thing is, it's literally just the same hub area ported over to Inkopolis. So it's like a skinned version of the hub. The shops all carry the same items. All of the different NPCs that you normally interact with for like the card battle game and everything, they're all there, but they do the same thing they would do in the main, what is it, the Splatlands Plaza? I don't know what it's called, but the main hub in the base game.
It's pretty much like a copy-paste hub with just like, it's like a different skinned hub, right? Is that...
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So people are scratching their heads saying like, what is the point of this? And I guess on the flip side of it, you could say that it's probably just like an added bonus to getting the expansion pass, like how a lot of games, like especially Fire Emblem games, like if you get the season pass or whatever, they'll give you something on day one of release that's not really planned to be like a main feature of it, but it's just something to give you that instant gratification of, hey, while we're working on the main stuff you paid for, here's the appetizer. So maybe that's what they're going for, but I don't know. A skinned hub just seems like the most pointless thing to have behind a paywall, in my opinion.
I think a better route would have been, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you disagree, rather, not if I'm wrong, because
you're wrong.
This is more.
It's okay.
No, you're right. Nope, you're just wrong. You before you speak. It's maybe if you had access to the campaign or something from there, because remember that's from the first game, and that had its own campaign that was like different, right? So maybe if there was like something to do there, right? Or what if it was Inkopolis, but it was Inkopolis like, something was different about it, or there was something to do there. Like I think the entire time we were watching it, because I played Splatoon 1 way back, and I played that one a lot more than even the second one, and um, I was like, okay, cool. So that's the same. That's the same. So what's different, or what are they giving us here? But like you said, right? Maybe it was just like a consolation where it's like you're getting the better stuff later. This is just to kind of tide you over, and here's a nostalgia hit.
Maybe. One thing that we don't know yet is maybe it could have just been a mistranslation when they said the shops have the same items. Maybe the overall stock is the same, but like you get a second roll of the rotation. So like maybe if you go to the clothes shop in Inkopolis, it'll have different clothes that you can already buy in the main hub, but it's just different on different days, if that makes sense. So like if the white t-shirt is available on Mondays in Inkopolis or in the main plaza, maybe on Wednesdays you can also buy it if you go to Inkopolis or something like that. So that's the one thing I'm thinking about where it actually could have a tangible benefit, because while you're not getting access to like exclusive items that you couldn't buy otherwise, you are getting more access to it since you would have two pools of shops to look at each day. That would be kind of nice and be an actual tangible benefit to having it. You mentioned the campaign, and I almost said, nah, nobody wants to play that. Most people don't like the campaigns in Splatoon, but there was an actual reason to play them in Splatoon 2 specifically, because we talked about this on a previous episode. If you beat all of the levels with the same weapon, you unlock the hero mode version of that weapon that you can use in multiplayer, which it had the same, stats and kit as the main weapon, but it usually looked a lot cooler. It was very different. Like the standard splatter shot looked like a P90. So if you got the hero version of the splatter shot, you had a cool looking version of it. So if they did throw the campaign in there or something abbreviated, a version of that where you could earn those weapon skins, that would be cool, because right now in Splatoon 3, the only alternate skin you have is just the main splatter shot, and it's honestly kind of lame in comparison to previous hero shots.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that. So is that not available is that kind of mentality not in Splatoon 3, where if there's like something to kind of strive for in the story that can kind of cross over to the multiplayers or anything like that?
Just the one hero shot, which I
Okay.
believe you get if you just beat the game. Like, you don't even have to 100%
Oh,
it.
okay. Well, that's nice. And they made it a little easier then. How about the Squid Sisters? That's a big one, right? Getting to see them again.
Yes, but
The OG.
it's still more nostalgia than anything.
It is. It is.
But what is cool is with the story, which is obviously going to focus on Pearl and Marina, we're going to have all three sets of idols in one game. So that is kind of neat.
Right.
I know my daughter loves the Squid Sisters, so I know she's excited to see them again.
She's been playing with you since the first game, right?
No, she missed out on the first game. I mean, she saw me play it, but she was still really young when that came out.
I see.
But when Splatoon 2 came out, that's when she had her own Switch, and we kind of really got into it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I don't know. I might get Splatoon 3 once that DLC, this kind of story DLC drops or something like that. I'm not sure. I mean, we'll get around to it. I'd like to play more of that, but I'm just not. I'm not someone who cares enough. I force myself to care about, and I'm kind of talking about my Destiny 2 like attempts. I have tried to get into competitive with groups of friends and play, and bless all those people who have gone and ran stuff with me and taught me things, and they'll be like, oh, Soul's a great guy, but when it comes to the competitive stuff, when it comes to the meta, just don't expect too much from him. And it's true. But this is one of those things where, I don't know, Splatoon 3 just, hopefully it gets more. Do you think that there's more to the DLC than they're trying to let on? That maybe that, either they'll reveal more to that story DLC, or there'll be stuff that follows it up in the future?
I mean, the story mode itself is going to be worth the money. I'm pretty confident in saying that. That's going to be worth the price of admission because we already have a precedent with Octo expansion. But in terms of other stuff, I'm glad you brought that up because they still have the free content they release, and it's done on a seasonal basis now instead of like the drip feed that they used to have. Like every 2 weeks, there'd be a couple new weapon variants and clothes and stuff added to the shop. I honestly don't like this seasonal drop of everything versus just having everything kind of slowly introduced over time, especially for like a games as a service type of deal. It's better for the engagement of your players to have stuff constantly updating slowly bit by bit instead of just dumping everything in big chunks over long stretches of time, because there's hardcore grinders out there that'll play 30 hours straight after it all drops, get everything, and say, okay, cool, nothing new here, and then just stop playing until the next drop. So I really wish they would have kept the drip feed, or did a combination or a hybrid where you'll get a bunch of stuff in one shot, but they'll still add like clothes in the rotation every couple of weeks, for example.
Yeah, I would want that too. Just, if I was somebody who was playing avidly, just to have that content coming through.
Look at Halo Infinite. I mean, that's a prime example of why you should have constant content for your online game.
Yeah, there's too many games that you can get engaged with now that are free to play that will have that, So when you pay for a game, you kind of you want to have that support in some way too, especially if they have a season pass that you can purchase and whatnot, right? So hopefully, going forward, it does successfully enough, because I know that sometimes, that has to do with it, at least for Nintendo, maybe with this. I think that's their only not MMO, but their only what's it called? Their only
Online game.
FPS, really, because Mario Kart's online, and that has some competitive stuff to it, but they don't have like competitions and things like that.
They've got online cups every once in a while.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
okay.
They do hold tournaments for that. It's not like their biggest esport like Splatoon is, but yeah, it's up there. But Splatoon 3, especially Japan, definitely top tier for the competitive environment.
That's great. Switching gears a little bit.
Xenogears? I guess I'll force the segue in here so that we could talk about Xenoblade 3 for a bit.
Oh, funny. Yeah, go for it. What do you think?
It's a little underwhelming. Kind of a similar story. Like, we got a new hero character, Masha. I honestly haven't even booted the game up to play her quest. It's just another hero with a couple hero quests. And they also added the gauntlet mode, which is almost like a roguelike thing where you try to go for like a high score, and you get, like, each time you do it, you get different heroes as part of your party. So it's kind of a cool concept, but the rewards just don't seem really worth it. Basically, every character has 3 different outfits you can get from the rewards, but from what I saw, 2 of them are just recolors of the first one. So it's not like...
Is it because Masha is like a fashionista?
No, she's actually like a, what is it? Lapidaris is what she called herself, like a gem crafter. She does add a new mechanic where you can like craft custom accessories.
Okay.
I haven't played around with that or looked at any guides or anything to see how relevant that is, but I did see that there's like an element of luck to it where you have to like spend resources and you may not get like the desired effect or something. So I was just like, nah, I'm good.
It's like a gotcha mechanic slightly.
Almost, yeah. It's like they couldn't help themselves. They had to have some type of gotcha mechanic in Xenoblade 3. They took it out of the base game, coming from 2, but they were like, no, we have to add this.
Oh, they're like, did you miss this part? Did you miss it? This game didn't have enough waifus. Let's put it together here. Here you go. Have this.
Just sad because you're not even rolling for waifus. You're rolling for equipment, which is way less cool. But anyway, very similar to the Splatoon 3 DLC. It's not this wave of content that matters. It's the preview of what's to come that really got everybody in a tizzy, myself included.
Yep.
We got the story DLC, which we knew was going to be great. We've already had Future Connected for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and we had Torn of the Golden Country for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So we knew there was going to be something big, and it would have huge story implications. And we got that. We got to see Shulk looks like a more grown up Shulk, a fully grown up Rex, who basically just took the internet by storm with his new appearance. He basically was the Aegis driver, and now he's daddy. So that's Rex. We got to see a little bit of Alvis too. So there, he's a character that has had a lot of mystery surrounding him, and there's a lot of like loose ends and unexplained things. I won't go into all of it because there's a lot of spoilers, but play Xenoblade 2 and you'll understand what I mean. Yeah, he does wear the Zohar around his neck now in the definitive edition, which is significant to the plot of all three games. So we're finally getting that, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? We're getting basically like our Infinity War of Xenoblade that everybody thought the base game of 3 was going to be, with the way they previewed it and showed Nia and Melia in the previews. We were like, oh snap, it's going to connect both worlds and we're going to see tons of fan favorite characters from both games. And it didn't really happen like that. It was just a couple references and winks and nods. So now we're getting into the real fan service, the meat and potatoes of it. So I'm excited. I can't wait for that. It's going to be hype.
Yeah, it's like a penultimate, climax to, it's a payoff for following the story along the whole time. And something in you talking about this that just came to mind is, did you notice the DLC Splatoon that we just talked about? And then this DLC kind of has like an underwhelming start and then a more exciting one following it. Yeah. So I wonder if that is like a Nintendo ism, if you will, where, maybe that's just like a way they're going about some of these passes. But either way, if it is or not, we'll see. Hopefully they do pay off for those that pay for it. Do you think they'll do a Torna kind of thing where it's like a standalone copy of?
Yeah. Well, with that standalone copy, I don't know. That would be cool, but they didn't do one of those for Future Connected when Definitive Edition came out, which came out after 2. So I don't know if they're going to get like a full game release. Future Connected was way shorter than Torna, so maybe that's why they didn't feel it warranted like its own cartridge production. But
I never even heard of Future Connected.
It's the extra. So here's what Future Connected is. There was an unused area in the original Wii game called the Bionis' Shoulder, and it was this huge like green thing, like area with a lot of grass and trees, and there was like huts and villages, and there was a bunch of like bridges in the sky, and it was massive. It was like one of the biggest areas in the game, but it didn't end up being used in the final version of the game, but you could still access the area with some mods and like roam around on it. And basically what Future Connected is, it's an epilogue story of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 that takes place on Bionis' shoulder. So they actually use that area from the first game that never got any use, so you can actually play on this, secret area, if you will. I don't know it's what to call it, but like just a bit of lost content brought back to life. So it's super cool. The music is awesome. There's a couple new mechanics in there to mix it up from Xenoblade 1's combat, which is exactly what Torna did as well. But even 100%ing that mode of the game, I think only took me like 13 hours. So it's significantly shorter than Torna. So if this is meant to be like a much bigger thing like Torna was, I could see them doing another cartridge release, especially because Xenoblade is at the height of its popularity right now. So I would love to see that.
That kind of reminds me, you talking about it being an area that wasn't used was from, the first Xenoblade. Reminded me of kind of like the DLC. I know this wasn't part of the Direct, but the DLC that's anticipated for Scarlet and Violet in Pokemon. Kind of people think that, like people thinking it's gonna be like maybe a Kalos thing, or something that connects the region with something else, or obviously there's something there. There's just like these tall mountains that you can't climb, and it's just like a black spot in the maps in the game, and I'm like, that looks bad. How do people here that have lived for hundreds of years not know what's over there? But that's fine.
The fact that it's so conspicuously separated from like the rest of the region's borders is what makes it like, oh, there's clearly something meant to happen here. Like there's like black dot outlines around it, whereas the rest of the map just kind of fades off. So it's very obvious something's supposed to be there. I don't know if they're going to do anything as cool as like a whole Kalos strip. That would be too awesome for Game Freak in this day and age to do. Yeah, that kind of ambition is
Oh,
not the current
yeah.
company's MO right now. It'd be awesome, but I'm expecting something a little smaller, like an Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra type of deal, which were solid DLCs. Don't get me wrong, but nothing on the level of like Gold and Silver, where they give you the old region back. But I'd love to be wrong. You did mention, DLCs having a pretty lame start, but then an awesome finish with the previews in this direct. Well, let's see if that pattern continues, because we've got one more set of DLC to talk about, and that's Fire Emblem Engage's DLC. I wouldn't say that it had a lame start, though. I really like what they showed for Wave
Mhm.
2, is it? Wave 2? Yeah, it was Wave 2, 3, and 4. They actually showed 3 waves of content. So Wave 2 comes with new emblems. It came with Camilla from Fire Emblem Fates, Hector from Fire Emblem Blazing Blade, and Soren from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. So we got 3 new emblems and their maps in the Wave 2, which shadow dropped later that day, which was awesome. I played those maps already. And then Wave 3 comes out. I don't think they gave us a date for that. They just said later. And that's the one that has Chrom and Robin, as well as who's the other hero? I forget.
It's another older hero though.
Yeah.
It's not
It
it's
was
Ike. It's not Ike,
no,
right?
Ike's already in the game. It was for
Ike's in the
Veronica
game.
from Fire Emblem Heroes, which was a huge surprise
Oh,
because it's the first time. No, I wouldn't say the first time. They did put like Cypher characters, which is the card game in Japan, in Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of
oh
Valentia
wow.
on 3DS. So it's not the first time they've pulled like obscure franchise characters that weren't in games in the game, but
Yeah, but this is a bigger game than
oh yeah.
Echoes was, so I feel like that's still pretty big deal. I don't know much about that character. I played Heroes, but not as much as you did. Um, but still pretty cool for a Heroes character to be showcased like that.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I think Veronica's the perfect pick too. I'm glad they didn't go with like Sharena or Alphonse. Like Veronica's the character that everyone actually cares about. She's more interesting. So I'm excited to play as her, and it looks like she brings some type of like gotcha element to the game. Because like you could see her
Oh,
like summoning a 5-star Ike in the middle of it, and it even shows the little star animation as if you were pulling from the gotcha. So that'll be fun to see. Let me see if I'm missing anybody. Veronica, Chrom and Robin, and nope. I think it's just the two emblems, but Chrom and Robin are together, similar to how the 3 lords from 3 houses was, as well as Erica and Ephraim. Both of those are like they share the same bond ring. But we did get a little peek at Wave 4, which is a new story. They call it Fell Xenologue. There wasn't a whole lot there, but it did look like we got to see more Manicheets, characters transforming into dragons, and a couple new original characters. So that looks like it has the potential to be a really cool little side story. The one for 3 houses was cool, the Ashen Wolves route. It was similar to, I'd say it was closer to Future Connected than it was Torna the Golden Country. But I mean, Torna is kind of a tough bar to reach to begin with, so I'm not even faulting it for that. So we'll see where this lands in terms of like overall content and what you can do in it. I'm curious to see if it's going to be like separate from the main story or if it's something you can access within the main story.
hey, as long as they don't expand on the gotcha mechanic like Heroes, because the acronym for this game is literally fee. So, that'd be pretty bad. Um,
Well, they are trying to get you to buy that season pass. So I mean, they threw Camilla in the first set of characters there, so
yeah, I
they knew what
know.
they were
You,
doing.
you know what they were doing, yeah. As soon as I saw her, I was like, yeah, okay.
Got to get it. She's a really good unit too. She's like a combination of Sigurd, who gives you extra move, and like
Mm.
Celica, who gives you a ton of like magic stuff. So like she's actually really good.
I love characters like that. Those are the ones to have on the team and protect, make sure they don't fail. But I heard Engage has so many characters, it's almost like
Yeah, there's too many characters, and the deployment limits are a lot smaller than in previous games. Like
Mm-hmm.
most maps, you can only send out 8 to 10 units, sometimes 11, and rarely 12. So
Mm.
it's not like previous games where you could send out an actual small army. It's a lot more tightly focused in terms of like the map design and everything. So you're going to end up spoiling certain units because grinding is dang near impossible in this game.
Oh
So
wow.
once units fall behind, it's really hard to get them off the bench.
I didn't know that. Um, but you know what isn't on the bench anymore? Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. It's so nice to see them in the spotlight. That was the biggest surprise. I've been wanting to talk about that this whole time.
Yeah, we can definitely move on to that because I've got a lot to say. We got Golden Sun finally on the Switch in one shape or form.
Yeah.
It, it's not one of the day oneers, but it was there, so I'm very
I like
happy.
that it was in like the last little slide of it
They
was
didn't even show the full game art. They just showed like slowly like scrolling like the first half of the box, but they knew we'd know. So I love that they included it like that, where it was like just like a peek, like a little hint.
yeah. I that
So
was
we're getting Lost World too. So I mean that's awesome. We're getting two of the best games on Game Boy Advance eventually.
Lost World? Wait. Which
Golden Sun: The Lost World,
Oh,
the
oh,
second one.
oh, oh, Lost Age. Lost Age. But
Lost
I know
Age.
what
I
you
said
mean.
Lost World.
You did. And I
I
was
was
thinking Sonic and I'm like, "Wait, what?"
dude. I was literally playing that on the Steam Deck yesterday. That's why it's in my head. I was showing Zale Lost World because he wanted to see it. So
Oh. Yeah, that's awesome. No. I did he like it? Does he like it? He's a
of
Sonic fan,
course
right? I think
he loves anything Sonic. He'll play Sonic Forces if I put it in front of him.
honestly, I've wanted to know. I'm like that has to be his kid because I've seen it. I've seen you playing it. Like I always see who my friends are playing and everything, and or see what my friends are playing. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, cool. So his kid likes Sonic. That has to be it.
Yeah. You see a Sonic game played on my profile, it's probably him.
But speaking of, like, this opens a huge door now. We've got, maybe the Sonic Advance games that can finally be available.
One that I was really surprised to see on the GBA service was Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. Because we already have two versions of that with the All Stars on Super Nintendo, as well as just the original version on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So seeing a third version of the game was a bit of a surprise to me, but it does make a little bit of
Hmm.
sense when you see that they did add all 38 of the e-reader
Yeah.
levels, and a lot of those weren't released in North America. I think only 11 actually launched in North America in their original form in the cards. So I was playing those the other day, and those are some of the most creative levels I've ever seen. I'm so glad they added that because I never got to play those as a kid for obvious reasons. I mean, it's an e-reader. I never had one of those, and I didn't pick it up when it came out on the Wii U Virtual Console, where they did add
They had
the
those.
e-reader levels there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I missed out on that as well. So just having it right there on the Switch was really cool.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing. That's really my first Mario game outside of Mario Bros. When I was just a little kid, I played Mario Bros. The Duck Hunt cart, and then I had Mario Bros. 3, and never played Mario Bros. 2 until the first Mario Advance game came out on the GBA when the GBA came out. Yeah, so uh,
That was the first time I beat it. It was on Super Mario Advance. That was my first Mario game on
oh,
GBA.
great! Wow, that's a good first one too. I thought it was a great release title.
Oh yeah, it was so fun hearing all the voice clips too. Like at the time, that was like revolutionary. It's like, whoa! Normally you'd have to get an N64 to hear voices.
Oh,
Charles Martinet doing his thing, just what I needed.
then you had Super Mario World 2, or Super Mario World, uh, Super Mario Advance 2. Gotta love these names. Uh, yeah, and that was my first GBA Mario game that I played, and I
Nice.
remember I got the just small little story time from me here, but it was yeah, Black Friday of 2002, and I had been so hyped because GBA had been out for I think 2 years at that point, or it was like
A year.
its second year, I think.
It was in its second
here in
year. Yeah.
North America, and oh boy, they had the platinum color, and this is something you and I bond on, um, because
Yes.
that's one of the colors you really enjoyed, and I believe you also had one too. And I remember telling my dad, "Dad, it's going to be 50 bucks on Black Friday. I need to get this console." And we waited in a line that wrapped around Walmart, and I got like the last one, and I got that game. And I remember wrapping it myself. He was like, "You know how we do it in this house," and I wrapped up my own gift, and I waited until Christmas to open it. Act surprised on camera, you know. I actually have footage of this. It's pretty great. Um,
Oh, you're gonna have to show that sometime. Maybe that's a little treat we can throw on the channel as a short or
yeah,
something.
yeah. Oh man, yeah. Me, my acting skills, acting surprised. It's great, but yeah, like
By the way, for our listeners, I just want to throw this in there real quick. You mentioned it was $50 on Black Friday. Did it come with the game at that price?
no, the game was separate, but
Okay.
really good because I think the console was 79
Yeah,
99 during that time. So having it for $30 less pretty much gave you a free game if you think about it, I guess. Um,
for sure. So its introductory price was 99.99.
oh, okay.
So, and that was at launch. I don't know if they dropped the price by the time that you got to it before like the sale, but still, that's half off of what it cost at launch. So that was a dang good Black Friday sale.
Yeah, no, I so much savings were had. We got like a digital camera. I think we got like a Kodak. It was like a 3.2 megapixel camera, super fancy. Um, yeah,
We are dating ourselves here with these specs.
we are like, hey, how old are these guys? But yeah, so
Back in my day, the photos shot out of the camera when we shot them.
it was a good time. What a time to be alive. It was a simpler time. It really was. And yeah, I'm glad we got those levels for that game because it was my favorite, NES title. So and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking game on the Switch. I love how kind of shifting into the performance of some of these ROMs. Like they did a great job with your aspect ratio settings. You've got your filters for the Game Boy Advance, or I'm sorry, Game Boy stuff. Um, and I think,
Mention that. Tell me more about
yeah,
that because I think that's kind of one of the undersold like features of the Game Boy side of things, which I thought was really cool. Tell me about those filters.
yeah. So you've got your black and white Game Boy filter, and these are all accessible in the settings gear icon on the far left. So if you go there, you'll see all three of them. So there's one for Game Boy, and that's black and white. Looks really crisp, especially on the OLED. And then there's the or I'm sorry, it's not black and white. I do want to rescind that comment. So the Game Boy one is kind of like that green tinge that the DMG had,
Oh,
and then the
yeah.
Game Boy Pocket has the black and white kind of aesthetic there, which is interesting because
A huge upgrade that was at the time, huh?
it was a bigger screen, uh, and it was just still as crisp. That was the beautiful part, is that for its time period, not only were you getting a tinier console that ran on AAA's instead of four AA's, which is huge. Uh, you got that better screen real estate, and
The contrast is better. You could actually see it.
yeah, you could see each of the dots instead of it being kind of blurry, having that ghosting effect.
I was going to ask, did the Pocket have the ghosting or was that exclusive to the DMG?
No, it did suffer from that too, but
Ah,
it was less noticeable because of the different kind of color palette that had. But I still really like um, the Game Boy. The Game Boy. Well, now I'm thinking more of the Analog Pocket because the Analog Pocket has the Game Boy Light filter, which is really nice. I wish we had that filter in the Switch Online because
does that look like?
it's really cool. So that one is just a bonus filter I'm going to mention here, just because I got my Analog Pocket recently for Christmas. Um, but it's like a mint. it's like a
Huh.
mint backlight. So you're looking at like a green, but not like the DMG green. It's more of like a mint. So if you look it up, you'll see what I mean for the analog pocket filter. And I like it just because it's like, I don't know, it's a more welcoming. I wish we got the Game Boy Light in the West. Instead, we got the Game Boy Color, and it was exclusively sold in Japan. Those are still they came out in silver and gold colors. They have two double A's, but really cool. Anyway, back to the convo. With the third filter, that being the Game Boy Color. So, like, if you put a Game Boy game inside of a Game Boy Color, there may be, if the cart was a colored cart, like a black or yellow, red, blue for Pokemon, you're looking at an additional, uh, I guess, color palette that's being generated for the game. So I know Legend of Zelda DX benefited from that with Color Dungeon that was added in for that release, and Pokemon Yellow had different colors that you couldn't see on the black and white. So hopefully we get some of these Pokemon games. But I am happy to see DX there because remember they came out with the Game and Watch Zelda game, and we didn't get the DX in there. So this is kind of our way to get the DX version of Zelda outside of the Virtual Console from before. So I'm glad that came around.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the Game Boy Color one. I don't even bother with the other ones. Nostalgia's cool, but I want to play the best versions of the games. And speaking of the ghosting effect, that's also an option in the settings for some reason.
What?
I mean, yeah, you could turn on it. I forget what they call it, but it's like reproduce classic feel or something like that. And it's
Oh,
it's
is
it's
that what
right
that
above the
does?
filters. Yeah, it just gives it the ghosting effect, and it's just that it is not it. Like if you really want that nostalgia and that authentic experience, sure, go for it. But nah, with that filter off and then the Game Boy Color filter on is the best way to play all of the games.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I mean it's a great start. There's a few games that I do want to try, like that Gargoyle game. I'm spacing on the exact name for it, but it seems like a really fun, different side scroller, kind of like Adventure of Link style game. I haven't played before, and hopefully the releases of those games are faster though. Like, can we just get a few more games more frequently just because of how small they are? I feel like
Right.
these are portable games, and there's a huge library. Why are we, this library is bigger than the rest of the ones that we have available right now. I believe. I don't know. I don't know if it could compete with the Super Nintendo. Maybe it can, but either way, they did a great job with the emulator. The games play great. Uh, a good starting selection for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Gotta say, the Game Boy Advance looked great on the big screen.
Oh yeah.
That's the way to go, in my opinion, for playing the Game Boy Advance games. I mean, obviously playing them portably is awesome too, especially for the OLED. But when you do dock your console, if you have a dockable Switch, you're in for a treat just because everything looks so good.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty happy with the initial selection and even the previewed games that we got. I like how you called out the Zelda DX, Link's Awakening DX, because outside of the remake, there really isn't a whole lot of ways to play that version of the game. I mean, even the remake isn't even that version of the game; it's a remake. But like they did the Zelda Game and Watch console, the anniversary one,
Yeah,
and that one did have the full Link's Awakening game on there, which was cool. But it was the black and white one and not the DX1 with the full color and the new dungeon. So I
yeah.
was happy to see that it was the DX version they added, and they finally let us play it. They're like, okay, DX is the remake's been out for a couple of years now. Let's just go ahead and throw this out there. It's not going to cannibalize any sales at this point, with Breath of the Wild 2 coming out in a couple months anyway. So good on Nintendo doing the right thing, throwing that out there. We do have the Oracle games coming out too, which is awesome. We didn't even talk about Minish Cap, which is a day one game for the GBA service, which is
Yeah.
one of my favorite Zelda games. Talking about 2D Zeldas, Link's Awakening and Minish Cap are two of the best.
Portably, they really are. Capcom knocked it out of the park They did such a good job with that. It's got that like Zelda Wind Waker aesthetic, and what they pulled off for the GBA, like it's incredible. You can like roll and the
Very modern, right? Like it
yeah,
holds up really well to today's
the
standards.
music. Oh, it's
Oh,
it's
so
it's
good.
beyond charming, is really what it is, and it leaves a lasting impression. I remember buying a significant other of mine a modded Game Boy Advance SP with a copy of Minish Cap. And at the time, unfortunately, I could only afford a bootleg copy because Minish Cap is pretty expensive. Um, and just so that she can play it, because I'm like, oh, you love Zelda, you say? You must play Minish Cap.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, her save got deleted when she got to the Sky Temple. And
Oh,
so she got pretty bummed out. And what I did as
I
a,
think that was an anti-piracy feature,
it might
actually.
have been, it might have
I
been.
know there were some of those that had some really weird anti-piracy features. What you're describing sounds very familiar. I could have sworn I read something about that.
And that could be a thing, and so it pushed me to get a legit copy of the game. And I played up to the Sky Temple and gave it to her and said, "Hey, here, sorry about that, but you know, if you haven't played Minish Cap, go out there, and try it out on the online. Having it right there in your pocket again is awesome. Playing it on the big screen, like the Game Boy Player days, is a beautiful thing too. So, I really love the Picori. I'm a little sad that we never got to see them again, but I know that they got kind of locked away, right? Because like, if I think Enslo, I believe is his name. Uh, he was the wizard that was able to allow you to see the Picori because you could change into a Picori size. So maybe the Picori are all around us in Zelda games. We just don't know it.
Now, it's definitely an awesome blast from the past, and I love that game. I could still hear the clarinet playing from the soundtrack. So, really awesome stuff. We
Yeah.
could talk about Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games forever, but we probably shouldn't. So, we'll go ahead and move on, and we're going to do some quick hitter stuff. A few things from the Direct that stood out to me that I just wanted to throw out there. We did finally get a release date for Advance Wars. Awesome. Definitely planning on picking that up. Another GBA nostalgia trip. We're getting a lot of classics. This is so cool. You want to talk nostalgia?
Yeah.
We can't talk nostalgia without mentioning Sea of Stars. So tell me about it. You played the demo, right?
And I found a grammatical issue and screenshotted it right off the bat. I was like, "What's going on? Why did they spelled tough as thought?" And I was like, "Oh,
Really?
yeah." It was glaring. I was like, I reread the sentence. I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm just tired." And I'll share it with you after we're done here. Um, anyway, outside of that small thing, because I'm kind of a grammar Nazi when it comes to that stuff in any
No,
media.
that really bugs me in games,
Yeah.
especially. I mean, I'll forgive them because it's a pre-release demo, but
Yes. Yeah.
when a final product has that stuff, it really irks me. It just reminds me of the old Capcom SNES days where they couldn't translate to save their lives.
Oh man. I hope that's not the case here because they do say at the beginning, it's not a final product and that's okay.
Right.
Um, but I love.
It can be patched even
Yeah,
if it does end up there, so that's the
that's
good thing.
true. I love everything about it so far though. You know, uh they kind of just start you off. I don't think maybe where the game starts, I don't know. Um
Oh, definitely not.
because it's like really quick, they just kind of like you boot in, you choose a character, it
Oh
says
yeah.
don't worry about you can, choose uh a girl and a guy. Trying to remember their names. It's like Valere for the girl, and the guy is like a sun. It's like sun and moon kind of thing. Pretty cool. Uh, the girl's got a spear. He's got like these like sickles. Anyway, the fighting is very reminiscent of Chrono Trigger and inspired by it. It's neat that there's a little clock, like a timer icon, above enemies' heads, and it'll go down like 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, and as it's going down, you know that they're going to be able to take action after that is gone. So it's neat to be able to make your moves, and your moves have charge ups. So you can like press and hold A to make it more powerful of a move, and so there's different tiers that you can make a move more powerful, and then decide, okay, do I want to let go right now because that guy's going to attack one of my other members and I want to have to heal? So there's a cool level of strategy there that is a good visual implementation. I thought so.
Did you also notice the timed attacks as well?
Maybe not. I only went through a few
Oh,
battles, so I only got up to the part where they had like the little arm wrestling cutscene. Um, yeah.
okay. You've played Super Mario RPG, right?
Um,
Or the Mario and Luigi games? Have
I
you
did
played
play the
those?
Paper Mario games.
Oh man. Well, that one still has some of the concepts. So I found out there's timed hits in the game where like the moment your sword hits the enemy, if you tap A, it does more damage and it does an extra animation.
Oh,
And same thing if you're about to get hit by
yep, Paper Mario
attacks.
has that. Okay, so I was wondering if that had that in
Yep.
this game because I did that with the girl character. Like she made a hit and I noticed it wasn't a charge up. So I'm like, oh, so if I had timed it when she makes contact, maybe that does more damage. I'm glad you confirmed that. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's an audio cue too. It plays a little chime if you get it
oh,
right.
neat. I,
And
oof,
I
I
just
love that. That's incentive. That's
yeah.
incentive to play games that are, you know, typically turn-based in that way. This is more action turn-based, but
It's more engaging.
it's so fun. I love the aesthetic. The characters are vibrant and, you know, the the font, the everything that they chose for it seems awesome. I love exploring the world. The way they made it is very Golden
It's
Sun-esque
gorgeous.
almost.
Yes, yes, thank you. I was gonna say that it's Golden Sun meets Chrono Trigger with some battle
Yeah.
system of Mario RPGs.
We might have a hit on our hands, and I hope they make a physical copy of it. I hope it does really well. I haven't been excited for a one-off game like this in a long time. And the music, right?
Oh man, such good music. You know that it's composed by was it Yasunori Mitsuda from Chrono Trigger Frame? So I mean that's where a lot of the comparisons get made.
You know, I didn't know his name, but I did know that fact because I think we talked about it in the direct or when we were commenting on it. I think you said that, and
Yeah.
you can hear it because it's just
Oh yeah.
like it's a bop,
It's
and
like new Chrono Trigger music.
it is, and yeah.
This game's gonna be so good. I'm already predicting it now. This is gonna be an above 90 meta score. It's a labor of love. Everything, and it's been hyped up for years now. This is the first time we've seen a playable version of it, but it's something that we've had little previews of for a while now. So it's nice to kind of finally see it in a more concrete form, and I'm super excited. By the way, I just wanted to mention that the male's character name, I could never possibly forget it because it's my son's name. His name is Zale. It's just spelled a little different.
I told myself I am so mad. I am so mad because I played it and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to bring that up in the podcast. I'm going to say Zale because it's his son's name." And I'm over here like, "Yeah, I can't remember it. Yeah." That's
So I thought that was cool. And then Valere, the girl's name,
yeah.
is only a letter off from my niece's name, Valeria. So
Aw.
I can't forget any of these names. They're memorable in all the right ways. So good on them. Can't wait to play Sea of Stars. We do got to move on a little bit though. Let's talk about another banger, Metroid Prime Remaster. Just freaking shadow dropped it right there in the direct.
How did they do
We
that?
talked about. I don't know what wizardry they had, but like we talked about Dead Space being like
Yeah.
the prime example of a remake. Like this is also up there. This is the prime example of what a remaster should be.
Prime example. Oh boy.
That was completely accidental, by the
Yeah.
way. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I know that the Dead Space one is more of like you said, remake, so there's going to be new aspects to kind of reinvigorate. But it's insane when you do a side by side comparison with the GameCube version of Metroid Prime and this one, and having that smooth 60 FPS is just so nice as
So
well.
good.
It looks great.
Even comparing it to the Wii trilogy, it looks good because that's the one that had the widescreen. So even if you do like a true side by side with the trilogy on Wii versus the remaster, it's like, yeah, they didn't just upres a few textures and polish a few models. Like there's some like legit legwork done to this remake. And I watched Digital Foundry's review because it was one I was looking forward to after seeing some previews. And yeah, like this, it's incredible. It shows what you can do with a little bit of legwork, as well as what you can make the Switch do if you really cater to it. Because they ported the source code of Prime and then went from there. So they were working with the actual source code. It wasn't running. It's not running on emulation.
That's right. No, it's it's the actual, like you said, source code.
It's a native version of the game for Switch.
Yeah, native version. I hope that this just continues to billow the hype for Metroid Prime 4.
Yes, and a lot of people are real excited now because it's like, wow, if Metroid Prime 1 looks this good, imagine what a brand new game with more time and budget. Because Prime Remaster didn't have the same budget as Prime 4. There's no way. So just
Right.
a simple remaster gets this kind of love. Imagine what Prime 4 is going to look like. Like it's making that reset button that Nintendo did look like the right decision. So good on them for that. Clearly the right decision. I'm not like a huge Metroid fan, but I'm really excited for Metroid Prime 4.
And even speaking kind of just circling it all together with Game Boy Advance. I hope we get no, not hope we get. Didn't they? Yeah.
No, it's confirmed.
Fusion,
Yeah,
right?
Zero Mission. Was it Zero Mission or yeah, it was Fusion. Fusion was the one that was in the actual like reel of upcoming games, but we'll probably get Zero Mission
That
too.
is my first Metroid game.
Fusion?
Fusion. And
I've heard it's a good one.
That's why I always play the Fusion suit Samus in Smash.
Nice. I love that color palette too. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome, and it's such a great, the fact that her suit takes form because it gets infected. I believe it had connectivity, Prime and Fusion, with the Game Boy Advance link cable, so I imagine that Metroid Prime doesn't have anything like that. I don't remember what it did exactly. I think it had like 2 unlockables or something like that from way back then, but
that might be something they add to the GBA Online though.
maybe.
I think you unlocked a suit with the in Fusion if you plugged it up to Metroid Prime.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's anyone's guess. We'll see what happens, but at the same time, I hope that we also get Zero Mission. That's one I haven't played, and I know it's a remake of the original, I believe. Yeah, that's like the first Metroid remade on GBA, and so hopefully we get some of those Metroid. Well, we get that second Metroid game that came out on GBA for the online. Nintendo did such a great move with the online, expanding to Game Boy and Game Boy Advance because of all these games that they're building off of. Having the Advance Wars come out, everything kind of complements each other in a way where they can generate hype for maybe a sequel of a game with like Metroid Prime 4 with some of these releases, and who knows what else they can dip into in their library where they can go, let's like Oracle of Seasons and Ages were not to continue talking about this, but I just have to mention like it's a nice strategy that they have here where they can just start going through those and re-releasing them, if you will, and then cool, Breath of the Wild. I don't have to call it Breath of the Wild 2 anymore. Tears of the Kingdom is out, and now cool, and you can play a Game Boy game of Zelda too to tide you over or to get into. So it's just awesome to see more of these titles available for people to play, and that's why I was so excited about Golden Sun too. So
oh yeah, I'm absolutely going to do a full playthrough Golden Sun once it drops. But we want to talk about sequels. How about the one that nobody saw coming? Fantasy Life 2, The Squeakquel.
Like, is he going to read it now, man?
I think it was called Fantasy Life I. Finding Fantasy Life I or something like that. But basically, it's a true blue sequel to the 3DS game.
You played that one.
I did. I loved it on the 3DS. It was like I said on the direct reaction. It was one of the sleeper hits that not a lot of people gave it a chance. But it was a level 5 game. It was awesome. They did like a mobile spin-off or something that was like garbage, and I think it's already been shut down. So it's cool to see them going back and making like a full-blown game. It's going to be another one of those like, double A games where it's not going to have the highest budget or anything, but there's probably going to be a really solid game. And it's not a farming sim. There may be some farming elements, but that may be like 1/10 of the game. The focus is on just the different jobs. So like wood cutting, blacksmithing, or paladin. You can actually be a fighter. Like you still have to fight regardless of which job, but like some of them specialize in that, and you can switch jobs and build up your proficiency in all of them to gain all of the benefits.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, it's a super awesome system, and like all of the different jobs, like wood cutting or tailor was one of the jobs where you made clothes. Like they each have their own like different mini game with how you craft with them. So there was a lot of different things that you could do. And obviously, if you were a tailor, you could make clothes with better stats than armor you would just buy at the shop. So that's the benefit there. Or with a paladin, you would deal more damage with certain weapons or so. I can't remember exactly what paladin you get, but they had like certain skills that you would only get as a paladin.
That's neat. I don't know why that reminds me of Bravely Default and the class switching that they had there.
It's not quite that. It's not as fluid as Bravely Default.
Okay.
But there was a little bit more involved with the class switching, but it did benefit you to level up all of the classes.
That's awesome. I mean, getting any 3DS sequel games I always really like, and it's great that it's not another farming. That reminds me of the direct,
the last direct.
got where
it's like, oops, all farming.
The farming simulator direct. That's really what that one was like dubbed.
Yeah, it was super funny. There was like 4 different farming sims in the game, and they spent a lot of time on each of them too.
Yeah. Well,
hey, just kind of rounding out what we've got here for the direct reaction. We did see a little sneak peek of the next Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC. It said it's releasing this spring. It's one of the few things that wasn't shadow dropped in this direct, which surprised me a little bit. I thought for sure they were going to hit us with it, but man, that Yoshi's Island course looks so good. And it's a brand new original course. It's not just a port from Tor, built from the ground up. It looks awesome.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. Now we can get Yoshi's Island, the GBA version, and then that'll come out, and then that'll complement the track itself. Like all of that's so cool, like just the little stuff like that I just love. Like good for Nintendo. And yeah, I can't wait to play that one. The music, that track is such a banger. And then you got Birdo,
so good.
Which is
I
smart,
love what
right?
they
Because
did.
Birdo's like Yoshi's counterpart in the Mario series, so having Birdo release with that track kind of makes sense.
And it opens the door. Like this is the first time they've actually added a new character to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So you never know. We might see other things happen down the line. I think you mentioned in the direct Princess Zelda as a character. That would be super cool.
That would be awesome. How do these characters even fit in the menu? You're right. I did bring that up, but I mean, like, I look at the menu and it's like such a full roster. How does?
They'll find a way. They'll reorganize it. They'll make different numbers
Like
of columns
Smash.
and rows to make it work.
But
yeah, exactly. They'll figure it out. It's just some basic
I wonder
organization.
if that'll reveal that there could be space for more, though. Because like the way it is right now, it's like totally filled up. So if they reorganize it, there's going to be space left. So like you said, right, there could be more. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess people should also watch out for any leaks on Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The whole art book has leaked for the game. I went in and took a peek. I won't be revealing any of its contents, but it didn't seem like anything too spoilery, but there are some things that have not yet been revealed that were in the art book. So if you're very spoiler phobic, definitely try to avoid the internet for the next couple months. Outside of listening to our podcast, of course, still tune in for that. I won't spoil you, but I can't guarantee the rest of the internet won't. So just be careful out there. Papa Nintendo is not happy about that leak, and we will see a dead body floating down the river soon for whoever whoever leaked that art book.
No, because they'll probably, murk whoever finds out about the dead body. You know what I mean? So, um,
The Nintendo ninjas work fast.
they do. Watch out, Nintendo. Nintendo. You don't want to mess with them. I was hoping that we got Pokemon DLC, and that was okay that we didn't. Um,
Pokemon Day's coming up though. Just wait. I guarantee you, there's going to be a Pokemon Presents in the next week.
and I'm hoping that that's the case. But I wanted to ask, what's the release date for that Yoshi's Island level? Do you remember?
It's part of the next wave of DLC. They just said this spring,
Oh,
so
okay.
probably maybe in like April. I feel like April is a good sweet spot for it because Tears of the Kingdom comes out in May. I don't know if there's anything in April as of right now, so that would be a good time for them to drop that.
Well, that's amazing. Out of all the items, I think A minus is, going back to what we said with the grade, like you asked, it's like I think A minus is pretty good because we got Tears of the Kingdom. As like the little wrap up there and kind of wrapping things up today,
Still keeping a lot of the mystery, which is really cool. So there's still going to be a lot to discover when the game comes out.
there's too much. There's too much there, and even though they've shown us more, we got Ganon's voice.
Oh, that was super cool.
Oh
And
yeah,
that was Matt Mercer.
that's right. I want the game to come out. Honestly, when you said May, I forgot that it was May. So I was like kind of bummed. I don't know why I thought it was going to be released at the end of March. That's just like the eShop closing down. Hey, at least we're going to be able to get Legends Arceus Pokemon from the game uploaded to bank because I'm excited to use some of the Hisuian Pokemon in there. Sorry to get distracted here, but
Oh, for sure.
yeah, I'm bummed. I'm bummed about that.
I get it.
I don't want to wait till May.
It's going to be the game of the year in May, but we can wait just a little longer. We do got other stuff to hold us over. You mentioned the Pokemon Bank, or excuse me, Pokemon Home update for Legends Arceus. We're going to be able to get those over. And mentioned earlier, there's going to be a Pokemon Presents in the next week, so we may see that might be when they announce like mainline Pokemon games coming to the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance services. Which, oh man, I hope that happens. I want to play Emerald. Let me play the Battle Frontier. If this is the only way I could get Battle Frontier in a Pokemon game in 2023, so be it. Let me just play the old one.
You've been wanting that since that happened. I mean, I know that we liked how Black and White handled some of the post-game content, but nothing has, I'm trying to think of the expression.
Has it come?
Held a candle.
Yeah. Hasn't come close
to the original. Yeah.
They did it in Gen 3, Gen 4, and then the World Tournament in 5, and then just nothing even close to that. There's a glorified Battle Tower skin in each game, and that's about all we've gotten. And we haven't even really gotten that. I mean, Legends Arceus added something in the DLC, and one of the free updates, it's kind of like that, but with a little bit more of a gimmick that kind of felt Battle Frontier. It's the closest I've felt to having a Battle Frontier in a while with the whole the Arceus point system to do different buffs and healing and power-ups. It felt a lot like the pyramid without having to walk around. So I'm hoping we get something like that. Give me some cool post-game. That's all I want. Well, enough about Pokemon. We don't even have a confirmation of this presents yet, so we'll wait for that. We'll speculate on it later. It's going to come out by the time this uploads anyway, so well, our next episode will include our reactions to whatever they show there. Hopefully it's significant and not just a bunch of mobile game stuff.
I just wanted to quickly note something here for everybody who, might want to go back to playing Pokemon Emerald and maybe they want to bring their team up. It's quite a long journey. I just want to state that after the eShop closes, there's a couple things to keep in mind. If you've never downloaded Pokemon Bank, then you've never had access to the Poké Transporter, which is the only way to get your Pokemon from Black and White and Black and White 2 to the sixth generation. So if you have never purchased Bank, you'll want to do that just to be able to get access to the Poke Transporter, which is a separate application from Bank, but you only get access to it if you pay for that. So if that matters to you, do it before the eShop closes, right? You won't be able to download Poke Transporter unless you have Poke Bank, and even though it's going to be free, once it's free and it's available, you won't be able to get Poke Transporter, is what I'm trying to say. Right now, the only way to get Poke Transporter is if you get Poke Bank, pay the service with that app, then you can use Poke Transporter.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. Yeah, you can't just
You
go to
see
the
what I mean?
eShop and download Poke Transporter. You have to follow a link within the Pokemon Bank app, which you'll only see with the paid subscription. So
There we
basically,
go.
you're going to have to pay $5 for permanent access or semi-permanent access to Poke Transporter
Yeah.
and Pokemon Bank, because you never know how long they're going to keep that going. But yeah, I get what you're saying now. Yeah, you can't access the Poke Transporter app without first paying for the service within Bank. The Bank app is free, so if you want to at least have that, make sure
There you go.
you download the app. But if you want both for the definitive experience and the ability to move all of your Pokemon from any Gen 3 game up, or even Gen 1 and 2 if you have the 3DS eShop versions of those, that it would basically give you a way to transfer Pokemon legitimately from any generation Pokemon game. So I think that's worth $5 if you're a big Pokemon fan. So definitely do that before you no longer can.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was an important thing to bring up just because we're getting really close to it, and just wouldn't want people to miss out on it. I know we don't have a huge listener base right now, but for anybody that does listen, like it's a pretty big deal. It's the only way to retain them. I know there's people with Jirachis and all kinds of rare event Pokemon might want to bring those up. But yeah, we can move on to Hogwarts Legacy.
Cool. So yeah, we have our first example of a licensed game in quite some time that actually turned out to be a good game. I can't remember the last time we had a licensed game that was actually as well received as Hogwarts Legacy. And what's crazy about it too is it's such an ambitious game too. It's not even like, oh, it's just a tie-in game to the movies or whatever. Like they basically made a whole open world game with Hogwarts Legacy, and it's sitting at a 90 on Xbox for Metacritic, 84 on PS5. So little discrepancy there. I know there is a little bit of performance issues on certain consoles, so that might be why you see a bit of the discrepancy. But the user score is also solid as well. It's in the high eights, low nines as well, depending on the console. So I'm pretty excited for it. I'm gonna play it and pick it up once it drops in price. I'm not paying 70 for it. I'm done buying any game for 70. I'm sure it'll go on sale soon, but it looks like a really solid
Cries
game.
and Cries and Tears of the Kingdom.
God, I know. Well, I'm getting the special edition for that, so that's an exception. So I'm not paying the 70 for the base game. I'm getting the special for 130.
Oh man, okay.
Little mental
I love
gymnastics.
the
Yeah,
justification.
I got to
Yeah,
convince myself that I'm not paying $70 for that. It's the only way I can survive. But so yeah, what are your thoughts on Hogwarts Legacy, man? Just the game itself. We won't dig into the whole controversy here. We're judging it on its own merits as a game.
yeah, fantastic. The series deserves it after so long. I'm glad that they didn't go back to like remaking the original movie games or try to do something silly like that. It's its own original story that takes place in the past. And what better way to enjoy that world than to being able to insert yourself into that world? And obviously the title itself saying Hogwarts Legacy should give you an idea, like it's like not a movie game. I thought it was going to be more simulator-esque. Like back when they were showing us stuff, I was like not super interested in it, but then I realized, wow, it's like its own RPG.
Like Dark Souls,
It's
kind
got
of.
its own. Yeah, it seems like like I don't want to go so far as saying like The Witcher, but it's really cool that the gameplay has as much depth. Like I wasn't expecting that from what I've been able to gather online and stuff. I haven't played it. I do have a PS5. Um, Still kind of waiting it out. I don't know. I know it's doing really well, so maybe once I get some of my finances in line, I'll actually see if I can get it, maybe for a little cheaper somewhere, like maybe $60 or something like that. Because I'm with you on that still. I don't think I've paid for a $70 game yet. Woe is me, I guess. Developers hate me. Um, but yeah, it's cool. You get sorted by the hat at the beginning, and if you don't like which house you get sorted to, you can just choose which house you want to go to, and it just, changes you over there.
They should have made you reset your whole file for that. Reroll like
How
a man,
sweet.
like we used to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, soft reset, press all the buttons. Um, I don't know, it just seems like they did something
Yeah.
that was a success, and it was a surprise because we only saw good graphics, and we only saw, and we're kind of tired of that. So being able to see the user reviews match the critic reviews is a really cool thing.
Absolutely. Like we've seen so many cinematic trailers that just look at how cool it looks for so many games, and it's just like then the game comes out and you end up with a Forspoken. So it's nice to see that the game itself is fun and there's more to it than just, what they showed in the preview. So I'm with you. I'm gonna pick it up. I think $50 is my sweet spot. Once it's under 50, I'll go ahead and pick it up, and maybe it'll have a sale on Xbox Marketplace sometime, or maybe they'll pay the license and throw out the bag to WB Games and get that game on Game Pass, which would be super cool. We've seen that before, where a game starts off as a standalone game on Xbox, and then they pay for the Game Pass inclusion later on. You mentioned that it's not like a remake of the older movie games, which is good, but I will say the Game Boy Color version of the Sorcerer's Stone was probably one of my favorite like movie tie-in games. It was a turn-based RPG.
Yes.
That was
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I didn't know if you knew, and it's on my list of games to play. Can you tell me a little bit about why you loved it so much?
oh man, so it had some pretty good music, and there was like I wouldn't say an open world element to it. It's a Game Boy Color game, but like it felt like a traditional JRPG, which was super cool. It was super short, which is probably my only real criticism of it. But if you compare it to like the Game Boy Advance version, because this is kind of in that transition period where, both of those
Yeah, it
consoles,
was one of the last titles to come out on the Game Boy Color.
right? Both consoles were still relevant at that point. I think it was in 2002 or 2003, maybe even. And especially, developers were more willing to make a game for the Game Boy Color because they weren't losing out on potential sales since you could play Game Boy Color games and Game Boy Advance. But the Game Boy Advance version of Sorcerer's Stone was more like a isometric platformer, kind of like how the Spyro games on GBA ended up. So I didn't like that at the time as a kid. I was like, that looks way more boring than what a JRPG could be. Like a JRPG fits this so much better. So instead of a platform, it was a turn-based RPG, and it was a lot of fun. It was short, but it was fun. I don't think they ever did that style of game for
No,
any of the later games
they
either.
didn't.
So Chamber
They
Secrets,
kept that going. They kept that going with Chamber and Prisoner of Azkaban for GBA. Like all of those had that. Like they did that with Spyro too. That kind of like that view
I
and
hated
like
it. That fake 3D.
but everybody was so into 3D at the time. It was
Yeah.
yeah.
So Sacred, the I almost said Sacred Stones. Sorcerer's Stone on Game Boy Color was the one cool Harry Potter game I played before this. So I'm sure this is
I'm
gonna beat that
yeah.
by a wide margin. But it's kind of cool to go back to its roots with the RPG elements here. I can't wait to play it.
Me too. What a time! It's a great start to the year, don't you think?
Man, I've got no words, man. We're eating good. No matter what console you play on or what type of game you play, there's something pretty awesome for you. EA's come back to life with Dead Space. maybe they could get their stuff in order and release a good Madden game for the first time in 10 years. We'll see.
I'm excited for everything coming around, and thank you for everybody listening today. That about wraps it up. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Kraken Skulls Gaming, and hit the notification bell to be notified when a new episode drops. And dislike, like, throw tomatoes, do whatever it is you want. Let us know how we can improve. If you've got some ideas for us, we're always open. And
I respond to comments.
Yeah.
Sometimes a few months later. Sorry to the one guy that I took 3 months to respond to. It didn't notify me in YouTube Studio for some reason. But I did get around to it.
Who's just waiting.
Yeah, I did get around to it. So we do try to respond to comments. So even if you just want to talk video with us, leave a comment. We'll respond.
And take care, everybody. Happy gaming.
See ya.